The difference between taxes and tariffs. Now, this debate has been going on for over 100 years. The debate started back in the 1900s. Both of them are taxes, okay? But there's a huge difference between the two. We're going to talk about it. Okay, now, what we're going to talk about first is what happened after the Civil War. The Civil War ended in 1865. The Civil War was from 1861, I think. Did I put that right? 1865. That was the Civil War, right? During the Civil War, the United States spent a lot of money on both sides because they were both fighting the war. So they spent a lot of money. They borrowed a lot of money from other countries, and they spent a lot of money to fight the war. So prior to the year 1900, it's actually 1908, 1910, around that time. Prior to 1900, the government made money from tariffs, okay? And again, what we talked about yesterday, tariff they're both taxes. Taxes are money you collect from the people. Tariffs are taxes that you collect from other countries outside of the people. Okay, that's the huge difference. And we'll get into it in detail in a little while. But that's the big date. So prior to 1900, governments always need to make money or to collect money to pay for roads, military, infrastructure, buildings, government agencies, government employees. So the governments always need to have money to supply the government. So they need to either get money from the people or from other countries, from tariffs or from taxes. Prior to 1900, the government of the United States made money or made income, generated income or money through tariffs. Now, tariff is basically, we said it yesterday, but I'll mention it again today because we weren't videotaping yesterday. Tariffs are like if, for example, even today, Toyota wants to sell Toyota cars in the United States. So if they want to bring their cars to the United States, most countries would say, okay, well, let's take it the opposite way. If you worked for General Motors and you sold Chevrolet and you were the CEO and you wanted to sell Chevrolet Camaros in Japan, you would go to Japan and say, we want to bring our Chevrolet over there. We want to sell more cars. We want to sell them to the Japanese market. Japan would basically say, well, we don't want you to sell cars in Japan because we have Toyota, we have Nissan, we have Isuzu, we have, Lexus. We don't want you to sell cars in Japan because we want our manufacturers to sell cars in Japan because it employs our people and it generates income for our country. It makes our country strong. It makes taxes for our country. Why would we want to have General Motors bring cars over there? You with me so far? So Japan would basically say, if you want to sell your cars over here, you're going to have to pay a tariff, a tax to the country of Japan. And usually a tariff, it can be anywhere from 10 to 50%, which is usually normal. So if Japan wanted to let you sell your Camaros in Japan, they would say, okay, you can bring your Camaros to Japan, but you're going to pay the government of Japan a 50% tariff on those Camaros. So if the Camaro was $40,000 and you wanted to bring it to Japan, you'd have to pay a 50% tariff on top of that car. So the car would be sent in containers and ships, and once they're unloaded, they would reach customs in Japan. Customs would evaluate your manifest. You got 10,000 cars coming in at $50,000 or $40,000 a car. We're going to add a 50% tariff. 50% tariff on 40,000 is 50% of 40,000, which is 20,000. So for each car you brought over to Japan, you'd have to pay this country of Japan $20,000 tax or tariff to Japan. And that would cost you a lot of money. So in order to pay for that back, you'd have to sell your Camaros in Japan instead of $40,000. You have to sell them for $60,000. Now, what does that do? Two things. It generates income for the country of Japan. Make sense? A lot of money for the country of Japan. Plus, it protects Japanese manufacturers. You have Toyota. If Toyotas are sold in Japan for $30,000, Japan wants their cars to sell because those cars pay taxes to Japan, and it employs millions of employees in Japan who are making the Toyotas. Make sense? If you were to bring Camaros over there and made them comparable in price, then people would maybe buy a Camaro. Yeah, the country of Japan would get taxes on the sale of a car, and it would employ, if the cars were made in the United States, it would employ Americans, not Japanese people. So it would hurt the manufacturer Toyota, and it would hurt the employees of Toyota because they would need less employees because they're selling less cars. Does that make sense? So to counteract that, to make it more competitive for Toyota, to keep Toyota in business, they'll put the $20,000 per car, which is a 50% tariff on that car. So now your Camaro, instead of $40,000, is $60,000. So basically, it would give the option for people: you want a Camaro in Japan? Great, you're going to pay for it, but $20,000 is going to go to Japan to increase the money in government income, which decreases the amount of taxes Japanese people have to pay, and it protects the Toyota business because not a lot of people are going to opt to buy a car that costs twice as much money. That's probably no better than that car. Does that make sense? But the rich people go, hey, I want a status symbol. Like we would want to buy a Lamborghini here, you know. In Japan, they would want to buy an exotic car, which to them would be a Mustang or a Camaro. Make sense? But if you wanted to buy one, you're going to pay for it, okay? And you're going to pay tax to the government. The thing is, though, countries like Japan and Germany do not allow at all American cars to be sent there because they're so afraid of the market going over there and destroying their home market that they don't even allow American cars to be sent there. The problem in the United States is we allow Japanese cars to come over here, German cars to come over here, and we don't charge a tariff because corrupt politicians, okay? So what that does is that shuts down, like if you bring too many German cars over here, Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, too many Japanese cars, Toyota, Mitsubishi, all those cars, when they come over here, too many of them, not as many people are buying the Mustangs or the Ford cars, the General Motors, and the Chevrolet. So there are less jobs for Americans. We're more employing and making money for the Japanese government. Does that make sense? So to balance it off, you're supposed to add tariffs because you need to protect the people in the country. Now, this debate has been going on for years, but that's how tariffs work. Now, the debate's been going on for many, many years. Okay, in 1900 was pretty much around the cutting point. Taxes, okay, well, we were talking about the Civil War before. During the Civil War, the United States spent a lot of money in the war on damages to property, weapons, death, all kinds of stuff. But prior to the 1900s, the government was run on tariffs, right? And in those short few years, in basically 30 years, actually less than 30 years, in less than 30 years, on tariffs, the United States paid off all of the debt from the Civil War in less than 30 years. That's how powerful the tariffs are. It generated that much money that it paid off all the debt from the Civil War. Does that make sense? So that's how powerful it is. Now, there were some people that did not want tariffs. Now, the people who didn't want tariffs claimed that it hurt consumers by raising the prices. They also claimed that it encouraged monopolies because if you charged tariffs, they claimed you're not allowing other companies from other countries to come in to compete. And they also claimed it increased the prices, which, yes, it did increase the prices, but the idea that it's increasing the prices and encourage monopolies was basically a lie. Okay. Let's put it this way. There were two different groups of people. there was the Republicans, and there was the Democrats. That would almost explain everything, and we'll explain this why in a second. The Republicans wanted tariffs. The Democrats wanted taxes. Okay? And you'll see why in a second. Okay? This whole debate between taxes and tariffs comes down to the same debate about good and evil. One person were triangle people, and others were doing what was good for the people. Because you're going to see taxes basically enslave the people, and tariffs set the people free. Now let me show you how this happens. Okay? When tariffs are, well, let's put it this way. Prior to 1900, again, like we just said, tariffs were the way. People didn't pay taxes in the 1800s. In the 1800s, over here, wait, sorry, on the wrong side. This is the 1800s. Tariffs. This is the 1900s. And to today, to the 2000s. Taxes. Prior to 1900, in the 1800s, everyone had money. People were rich. There weren't very many poor people. People had money. They owned businesses. They had money. They could do what they want. The country had a lot of money. There was a lot of money to go around. The country had lots of money. The United States had lots of money. Present to us. There was a big debate. Over here was Woodrow Wilson. 1-0. This was President, what was his first name? Who cares? I think William McKinley. Okay. William McKinley wanted high tariffs. Woodrow Wilson wanted to tax the people. Okay. So what happened is, prior to 1900, William McKinley was the president, and he opted for very high tariffs, like a 50%. So if you wanted to bring something from another country that was competing with an internal business in the United States, you had to pay a high tariff, because if you wanted to compete in the United States market, you couldn't hurt the United States business. Does that make sense? Let's put it this way. If you were going to bring rice from China to the United States, or tea, and if we didn't have a lot of rice or tea in the United States, the tariff on that would be very, very low, or it might be zero, because we wanted to encourage that product to be brought into the United States because we weren't making it ourselves. But if you wanted to bring steel from another country, like iron or steel from another country, you would basically hurt, or coal, you would basically hurt a United States company. So in order to protect the United States company, McKinley believed you should tariff the heck out of an outside country. Yes, you want to sell your stuff over here? Okay, but you're going to pay a high tariff so that the prices between your steel and the American steel are going to be comparable. That way, if the prices are the same, then the American manufacturer will be able to sell their steel more often, or sell their steel in a fair market. Does that make sense? For example, if China was going to bring steel over here and they were charging $100 per ton, but the United States was charging $300 per ton for steel, which steel would you buy? The Chinese steel, because it's $100, and the United States steel was $300. So to make it even, because they wanted to protect the United States steel market, the Chinese steel would be charged a tax or a tariff of $200 per ton to make the prices comparable. Does that make sense? You could bring your steel over here, but you're going to pay a tariff on that steel that's so high that the price between your steel and the American steel is going to be the same. If people need your steel, they'll buy your steel, but that tariff is going to be paid. but the price can't be like this. Like right now, the price is like this. You want a television or a computer, you want to get it from China, the price is down here. American company, there's no American companies that make TVs anymore. I think back in the day we used to have a company called Zenith. There's no Zenith anymore, I don't believe. So what that does is when the prices are too low on an item and they're brought from another country and there's no tariff put on it, it puts the United States company out of business. And what happens when a United States business goes out of business? A lot of people lose their jobs, especially if it's a national company. A lot of people lose their jobs. Number two, the government doesn't pull in any taxes, because if all those people lose their jobs, the company is not paying taxes anymore and the people aren't paying taxes anymore. That's what happened in Detroit. Detroit used to be the car manufacturer of the world many years ago. Now it's a ghost town because all the cars are made in Japan, China, Mexico, Vietnam, whatever countries. They're made in different, a lot of the products are made in different countries. Does that make sense? So the big debate was McKinley wanted high tariffs, and back then in the 1800s, the government had so much money that they didn't know what to do with. The government of the United States was filthy rich. They had so much surplus money that they didn't know what to do with. They would set up what they called blue ribbon committees with government officials saying, how are we going to spend all this money? You know, should we make monorail? Should we make more Zeppelins or airplanes? Should we spend it on this? Should we improve parks? Should we make national parks? They had so much money they didn't know what to do with. They even contemplating giving some of that money back to the people. Because like we said yesterday, Yana, who owns the United States? Who is the government of the United States? The people. So if the country had so much money that they didn't know what to do with, William McKinley and the government decided, you know, maybe we should give the people back some of this money in tariffs. It's like we mentioned this yesterday too. It's like in the stock market. If you own stock in a company, and if you own a lot of stock in that company, and that company does great, they're just going through the roof. The company may, at the end of the year, of a good year, they may give all the shareholders of the company a dividend. A dividend is a bonus that's given back to the shareholders of the company in cash or in a check. So at the end of the year, if a company like Apple or Microsoft had a good year, they may say, for every share you own, we're going to give you $10. And if you own thousands of shares, you might get checked for tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the year in a bonus dividend because you own the company. So they were talking about, since the people own the United States, at the end of the year, we should give the people of the United States a dividend check for their stock in the United States. So every person in the United States would have been given a cash rebate from all the monies collected from tariffs. Can you imagine how the world would have been? 1900s. No one is paying taxes to the government. Taxes weren't invented yet. Nobody was paying taxes. The government was doing well, very well. The people were rich. The government paid off all their debts in a very short period of time. The government was rich, and they were deciding we should give the people money for living in the United States because the country is doing so well. Could you imagine how the country would be today if that was still going on? But a group of people said, we can't have that. We can't have prosperity in the United States. We can't have happiness in the United States. These people are slaves, are punks, we can't have them happy. So they were debating, we have to end this tariff thing quickly. Make sense? William McKinley was assassinated. Woodrow Wilson took over. They canceled the tariffs, and they started charging taxes to the people, income tax to the people. And he even said, he's the one that signed the papers. Congress, the Democrats were in charge at the time. Congress agreed to charge taxes, cancel tariffs. Woodrow Wilson signed it into law. And there's even a quote where Woodrow Wilson said, he said, I think I may have unwittingly ruined my country. He was a Democrat. The Democrats in Congress forced him to sign it. He signed it. And after that, we entered the 1900s. Remember, tariffs are gone. People are now paying taxes. We entered the 1900s. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was enacted after the Titanic sunk. The Federal Reserve was enacted, giving a private family in charge of all the United States money. They set up the IRS. Now the private family is in charge of the money. They hired they signed up the IRS, or they created the IRS. The IRS became a collection agency for the Federal Reserve and the private families, and they started taxing the people. That was in 1913. What happened 10 years later? What happened in the 1920s that was major? No, that was later. Okay, so what happened is 1913, the Democrats created the Federal Reserve, the IRS started taxing the people. That was an illegal tax. This was illegal, but they did it anyways. Started taxing the people. That was 1913. 8 years later, the stock market crashed, and we entered the Great Depression, where nobody had money. In less than 10 years, taxes, the Democrats, Woodrow Wilson, the Triangle people, destroyed the country. And we're still in that level now. And that taxes back then weren't great. They were maybe 5%, 8%, they were low, and they were supposedly only charged to the rich. But what happens is when you take away the tariffs, you allow all these foreign companies to come into the United States. The foreign companies are selling their items for way less than we're selling it for in the United States. Companies left and right started to close down. The rich people were taxed. Taxed for what? Taxed for losing their companies because they're letting foreign companies come in? Does it make sense? And when they were taxed to death for losing their companies, what do you think they did? Shut down their companies. I can't pay that tax. I'm not making any money. You let this company come in to sell their corn or wheat for way less than I'm selling it for. If a company brings, remember at this point, tariffs were so high that if China sent in steel or corn or wheat and they were charging too less for it, as opposed to the United States company, the tariffs would increase greatly to balance out the two. Now all of a sudden with the tariffs gone, China could send in steel dirt cheap, or corn or soybeans or whatever in so dirt cheap that who the hell is going to buy the United States one for triple the money, right? So everyone started buying this one. The United States companies collapsed. Some of the rich people went out of business. The stock market crashed. The Great Depression. Everybody was fired. That makes sense? What did it do for the bad people, the Triangle people, the Democrats? They were now allowed to charge the people taxes. The taxes started small at first, but little by little, they would say more taxes, this tax, income tax, sales tax, register your car tax, driving on the road tax, tollways, fishing license tax, tax. They also increased the regulations. That's when they also, in the next 100 years, they would make agencies, like the ATF, it was in charge of guns. What's the agency going to do? Charge you for having guns, regulate you having guns, fine you if you have guns. Also, what happens if you break a rule? Arrest you, imprison you, steal all your products, steal all your items. The DMV, all these agencies began, the IRS, ATF, there's hundreds of agencies that they invented. All the agencies were developed by them to cause regulations to the people. The regulations are rules that you must follow. The rules had consequences, fines, penalties, taxes that you had to pay to the government. And the most important thing to them is if you failed to produce the money for the taxes, they could steal your property from you and imprison you. That's what they wanted all along. Control of the people and theft of all of the money in the world. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but we mentioned yesterday how, I guess we don't need too much of this anymore. Let's do this. Back, like when I was a kid, 1964, my parents bought their first house. It wasn't a great house. It was still a 3-bedroom house, 3 small bedrooms. Each bedroom was probably a little less than that, a little smaller than, probably the size of that kitchen nook. But it was a small house. But they paid for that house in 1965, because I was 6 months old. They paid for that house $18,000. $18,000. You can't buy a car for that much money. That's how cheap houses were back then. $18,000. They bought the house, and back then, old people could buy a house. Well, they weren't old back then, but you could buy a house for $20,000. In 30 years, pay the house back, and in 30 years, so it would be 1995, the house is paid for. Right? The problem is that same little house back then, today, would cost around $4,000 a month in property taxes. The house cost them $18,000. It's paid for, but they have to pay $4,000 a month in taxes to keep it. Remember one of our big rules the first of the year? Does that make any sense? Right? You own the house. You bought it. You paid for it. Not only did you pay for it, but if it took you 30 years to pay for it, you didn't pay $18,000 back. You probably paid $40,000 for it because of all the interest. So you probably paid triple the house in interest. It's paid for, but you still got to pay $4,000 every year. And this income tax, this property tax on the property goes up every year, regardless of the economy, regardless how good the neighborhood is. The neighborhood can go to shit, they'll still increase the taxes. And here's the thing, this is why the Democrats, the triangle people, the evil ones, this is what they wanted all along. Control. If you can't pay that tax every year and do what you're told and obey us, if you miss 1 year, we're going to come and we're going to confiscate your house and kick you out in the street or even put you in jail. Failure to pay your taxes. See what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what they wanted all along. Control of the people, steal the money, and steal the property. Does that make sense? Yeah. Remember, this is the problem. Only in a couple of years, 1900, 1913, between 1900 to 1913, they obliterated the tariffs, allowing all kinds of companies to enter the United States and sell all their goods dirt cheap. Businesses, companies started closing like crazy. People started getting fired from work. Then in 8 years, we entered the Great Depression. Everybody went bankrupt. Everybody went poor. And it took them 20 years to recover from it. And a lot of people never recovered. They just lost their businesses. They collapsed. The United States collapsed. And even till today, people have to work their ass off to pay taxes these days. If you took in property tax, income tax, sales tax, registration on your car, taxes on your electricity. They tax your electricity. They tax if you go and stay in a hotel, they tax you. There's taxes on tax when you buy gas. There's a huge amount of money you pay on tax for gas. Everything is taxed so much today that if you added all the tax up, we probably pay 60% of all the money we make in taxes. That's what these evil people wanted all along. Control of the people, enslavement, punishment, and the ability to steal their property at will because they're not obeying the law. Does that make sense? And the big debate, this debate was a debate that was going on back in the 1900s. The reason we're talking about this now is because this is the same debate that's going on right now, right? Trump, Doge, the government is trying to go back to a time of tariffs. He's just charged recently tariffs on all kinds of countries. Countries, because for the last 100 years, it has been unfair. We talked about this yesterday briefly. Reciprocal taxes, remember that? Reciprocal tariffs, where if Japan wants to bring Toyotas here, we need to bring GM and Ford over there. You don't allow Ford and GM over there anymore? Okay, you want to bring Toyotas over here in the United States? Why don't you pay 120% tariff on that car? You want to bring a Toyota here for $30,000 or $40,000? You're going to pay another $40,000, $50,000 per car tariff. How about that? That's what Trump's doing. He's going all around the world saying, you've been ripping us off and raping us for years. You're either going to make fair reciprocal trade. You want to sell Toyotas over here with no taxes? You let us sell Ford, General Motors over there. No taxes. Unlimited. The Japan's, no, we can't do that. Then you're going to pay 120% tariff. And a lot of companies are agreeing to it because they don't want our stuff over there, because they don't want their company, they're smart. They don't want their companies to close like we did in the Great Depression because of the loss of income. So they're willing to pay the tariffs. And what's going on? Trump's only been president like 9 months. He's already collected like $3 or $4 trillion in tariffs. Remember, the national debt is $37 trillion. In less than a year, he's collected almost $4 trillion in tariffs, and he's only getting started. That make sense? If he ends up paying off the debt, and he's even talking about now, he went on TV a couple days ago, and he's talking about giving everybody in the United States who is a U.S. citizen $2,000 per person. That's for children, babies, any U.S. citizen, $2,000 a year. Is that a bribe? It's what they did. What's what they were planning. It's what McKinley and the Republicans were planning back in the 1800s. The company and company is the same thing. If you run the country like a company, where the people own a say in it and own a share and are not to be treated like slaves, because the people own the country, not the demon people, the devil people, the triangle people, the sons of Cain. The people own the country. So when the people own the country and the country is doing well and there's a pile of money there, they should benefit from it. So the first year he's in charge, he collects almost $4 trillion in tariffs. So at the end of the year, by Christmas, he wants to give every U.S. citizen $2,000 in dividends or in a bonus check for owning part of the United States, for being a U.S. citizen. Does that make sense? And that's just this year. What would happen if that increases? What if all of a sudden next year he wants to give $10,000 or $9,000 per person? And what if eventually the money is coming in so much that there is absolutely no need for taxes anymore? Does that make sense? If you can make the country do so well that the country or company of the United States is doing so well, has so much money that it could actually literally pay the people and stop taxing them, that would give the people prosperity, happiness, joy, money, and freedom. That makes sense? There was a couple of countries that did this years ago. Libya did it. Libya was one of the poorest countries in the world. Today it is one of the poorest countries in the world. But back at the time of Muammar Gaddafi, it was a rich country. It's full of oil. Libya was making so much money in oil. Muammar Gaddafi said that the people of Libya should benefit from the money that Libya is selling in oil. So he made everybody in Libya a owner of the country of Libya. At the end of the year, when Libya, when they would sell so much oil, the people were sent money every month. I think it was equivalent of thousands of dollars every month for just living in Libya. Everyone in Libya can go to school, college for free. Everyone can get their first home for free. Were no taxes, and they were paid money for living in Libya because the country was so rich, right? Then what happened when Obama was president, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, she sent drones over there and a hit squad of killers, and they killed him. They claimed he was a tyrant. They killed him, and the day after they killed him, Libya went down the tubes. All that was taken away. United States CIA took over the oil over there, and the next day, Libya went back to selling slaves. Now Libya is one of the poorest countries in the world, and it's one of the number one source of slave market. You can go to Libya and buy a slave on the street there for 50, 100 bucks. They slave their own people. See what I'm saying? So one group of people wants freedom for the people, and joy and happiness. One group of people only wants slavery. Same thing, Saddam Hussein did the same thing in Iraq. The country made so much money in oil. He was giving the people free school, free food. He would help them. He would give them, the government would give them money to buy houses. They would give them money to start businesses. People were doing so well. Then George Bush, the demon, said that he knocked down the Trade Center buildings, so we got to go there and kill him. And they killed him, and Iraq went down the tubes. So this whole debate, like I said before, is way more than taxes versus tariffs. It's literally between good and evil. One people wants total freedom for the people and prosperity and happiness and joy. The other one wants enslavement, suffering, pain, stealing, theft, and imprisonment. Does that make sense? So when you hear this debate going on, that's why I always try to teach you guys, when we're doing our detective classes or when we're doing anything, read between the lines. Like you said yesterday, Ange, you got to read between the lines. Whenever you're reading something, read between the lines. What does this really mean? I know what I read, but something doesn't click right. What does this mean? What's going on? When someone says we should have taxes, the first question you should think, where has that gotten us so far? The taxes are at their highest level in history, and people can't survive. Before, and even in the 1950s, 60s, it took one person in the house to go to work and make a living 40 hours a week, and that person can make enough money to survive the whole family. Now 2 or 3 people in the family have to go to work to pay the bills. Or 2 or 3 people have to apply for SNAP and benefits and steal the money from the government. But these days, one person in a household, unless they are a major owner of a big company, making major money, one person generally can't pay the bills in the household. It takes 2 people. We know people, like, I'm not going to say the names because it's videotaping. We know people who make a lot of money. The dad makes a lot of money, but it's still not enough. The wife in the family has to cut hair or do nails to make extra money, because even that one person who's making a lot of money flying all over the world in big meetings and businesses, still not making enough money to pay all the bills. The wife still has to cut hair or do nails or work as a nurse in a home health care, taking care of old people. Very hard to make a living these days with one income, because the bad people have taken away the freedom and have induced slavery by the taxes.